don't find a man like me no more. I'm sick of wondering where you are. Most underrated producers of all time. When you think about West Coast hip hop, as far as the actual sound, what's the first thing that comes to mind? If you like me, you probably went straight to G-Funk. The simple yet big drum patterns, heavy bass lines, piano chords, and synthesizers. The West Coast has always stood on having a unique production style that is often imitated but never duplicated. A lot of West Coast samples old soul, funk, and R&B records with artists like Parliament Funkadelic with George Clinton, Bootsy Collins, and Eddie Hazel, Zapp and Roger Troutman, just to name a few. Usually the first name that pops up when you mention West Coast hip-hop production is, of course, Dr. Dre, for obvious reasons. Dr. Dre, in my opinion, is the greatest producer in hip-hop and rap music, transcending every era of rap and still influencing producers across the world.
To this day!
With that being said, there's a handful of producers who have had the privilege of learning from Dre through firsthand experience. Almost always, these producers go on to be greats, finding their own production style and leveraging that experience and skill to work with other artists. Some of these producers may not have gotten credited for all their work, or may have just been credited as session musicians, programmers, composers, and so on and so forth. When you think about classics like The Chronic or Doggy Style, usually Dre gets a lion's share of the credit, but there's no way you can mention those monumental classics as well as several other West Coast classic albums and collaborations without mentioning the legendary DAZ. DAZ Dillinger, or Dat Nigga DAZ, is from Long Beach, California. I wasn't able to find much info about Daz's upbringing as far as what inspired him to start making music and his influences. Although it seems pretty obvious if you listen to his beats, you can tell Daz grew up hearing classic R&B, soul, and funk records, and obviously hip-hop, being influenced by acts like NWA. It seems that Daz's first production experience was at Death Row Records, having the privilege to learn from Dr. Dre as a teenager. Unbeknownst to a lot of fans, Daz had a lot to do with the production on Dr. Dre's classic, The Chronic, getting his feet wet on arguably the greatest hip-hop album of all time, a sound that changed the sonic landscape in modern music at the time. Even as a kid in the early 90s, I'll never forget witnessing so many people in their cars blasting The Chronic, and Daz was a big part of that. During an interview with DJ Vlad, Daz mentions that it was Warren G that taught him how to program a drum machine, but it was Dre that taught him how to take what he had from the drum machine, track it out individually, and then build on top of that, bringing the song to life. He also says he was around 15 or 16 years old at the time, being 17 when The Chronic came out, and also the age he was signed to Death Row.
I did Ain't No Fun, I did slew of songs, Rat-a-tat-tat. I mean, you know, a bunch of songs I probably just got programmed drum, programmer, something like that on there, you know. Yeah, it was, you know, it was a clobbering game back then.
It was apparent that Daz had soaked up the game and was ready to flourish into his own when it came time to work on the Snoop Dogg classic debut, Doggy Style. It was on this album that Daz would really come into his own, taking a more prominent role in the production process. He may not have always gotten the credit as far as the production, but any real fan can clearly hear Daz's style more up front in a large part of the project, although I'm sure Dre was doing the mixing. According to Daz, Doggy Style was more of a collaboration between everyone, with him doing more full productions as opposed to The Chronic where Dre was in the driver's seat.
It was more newer, it was more energetic and faster beats, and it had Snoop on it instead of Dr. Dre. And we wrote everything that was on Dr. Dre album.
Right.
But then we performed as us on the Doggy Style album. But people didn't know our face. They only know our music. On The Chronic, we was just help putting it together.
Right.
On Doggy Style, we actually created and put it together instead of Dre taking our ideas and putting it down. That's when we was just all learning from the first album. Then in Doggy Style, the Murder Was the Case, that's when I started producing everything.
It was also the first time we heard Daz and Kurupt perform together as the Dog Pound, where on The Chronic, they were both listed as solo artists. Take a young Daz with the influence of Dr. Dre and mix it with Snoop Dogg's smooth melodic tone, and the rest is history. Daz would further expand his catalog, producing a few records on the Murder Was the Case soundtrack. But arguably his most successful production credit has come on one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time, Tupac's classic, All Eyes on Me. Although Pac utilizes multiple producers on his project, Daz would take center stage, producing some of the most notable songs on the project, as well as Johnny J, R.I.P. Ambitions as a Rider, Scandalous, two of America's Most Wanted, I Ain't Mad at Ya, are all hit records produced by that nigga Daz. All Eyes on Me is one of the most successful albums in rap history, being certified diamond or 10 million records sold by 2014, and Daz was one of the main reasons why. Coming in the game on The Chronic, backdooring with Doggy Style, sprinkle a few soundtracks, and then smash them with All Eyes on Me. Sounds like a winning recipe to me. Amongst producing for so many great artists, we can't forget all the production Daz has done for himself, also being a very talented artist and songwriter. We mentioned the Dog Pound earlier, and we can't forget about their 1995 classic Dog Food album, where Daz is listed as the producer on 14 of the 17 tracks. Eventually, Daz would drop his first solo album, Retaliation, Revenge, and Get Back, in 1998, his only project with Death Row before founding his own label. Daz would go on to drop a long list of albums throughout his career. At one point in time, Daz and Kurupt would have a falling out before eventually coming back together to drop Cali Is Active, with Snoop Dogg as the executive producer. From all the Death Row artists like Tupac, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg, R.I.P., Lady of Rage, RBX, and more, not to mention artists like Mac 10, Trey D, MC8, Ice Cube, Too Short, Warren G, DJ Quick, Dub C, Scarface, C Murder, and the list goes on. Although Daz has been active for a long time, like a lot of young producers coming up in the game, there's a lot of records he may have produced or a program that he didn't get full credit for. It's also been said by a lot of people, including Suge Knight, that Daz produced a lot of songs Dr. Dre got the credit for.
And then Dr. Dre heard it, then Tupac came and he said he got a song with Tupac. He got a song with Method Man and Redman in there. You know what I'm saying? And Pac didn't know that I did the beat, because Dre said he did the beat. Then when they came playing it, I'm like, nigga, that's my shit. You know what I'm saying? That's when Tupac, Dr. Dre got into all that type of shit.
Who knows what they had worked out, but we all know that Daz deserves his fair share, considering his body of work. From all the classic albums, mixtapes, and various soundtracks, Daz has made his presence felt, not only on the West Coast, but hip-hop and rap music in general. There's no way we could talk about West Coast rap production and not mention Daz, Dr. Dre's first student.
I learned, I'm a student of the game, I'm Dr. Dre's first student. You know what I mean? So everything that I do is like perfection, you know. Sometimes Kurupt in them head, you're like, man, you switching the song up on us, man. And I'm like, hey, I gotta get the kick right. You know, it might sound like that, but then you gotta get the frequencies.
From the young kid peeping over Dre's shoulder,
I was learning, right up on doing that, you know what I mean?
To executive producing and overseeing full-length projects, contributing to timeless music while not always receiving full credit, and working with some of the greatest talent in the game, going multi-platinum, being nominated for and winning several awards. This is why DAZ DILLINGER is one of the most underrated producers of all time. Stay solid.
I won't be a victim to your homies. The fuck the grip of blood. I won't be a victim to none of you homies. That goes for all you Crips and Bloods. Ha!